I'd like to thank Case Western for inviting me to this important gathering in Cleveland and also to the classes that I'll be addressing here at the university. I'm happy to talk to you about Iran and the nuclear dynamic. It's a huge discussion. It goes vastly beyond the headlines, and what I'd like to do is lay out some of the plateaus that your investigation should cross over, and then, of course, take any questions to the best of my ability. I guess most of you have followed the Iranian nuclear dynamic in the media. Many people have only a superficial understanding of what's happening there. The Iranian nuclear program is actually more than a half century old. The first research nuclear facility was obtained from the United States in 1956. During the late 80s, Iran successfully obtained the beginning of a nuclear weapon program from A.Q. Khan in Pakistan, namely the P2 centrifuge, and the funding methodology was through what is lovingly called the Bank of Crooks and Criminals International, but more technically called the Bank of Credit and Commerce. And in 1991, that narco-terrorist money laundering bank was put out of business. The A.Q. Khan centrifuges, which went to the P2s, were immediately enhanced and turned into Iranian variants on the level 2 stage, level 3 stage. They were replicated, they were put into cascades, and they began nuclear enrichment. Nuclear enrichment beyond medical and civilian use. I think most of you understand, or maybe I'm wrong, does everybody understand how a nuclear reactor makes energy? Anybody know how a nuclear reactor makes energy? What happens in the atomic exchange? Do you know how? It's a water boiler. It's the most sophisticated, expensive water boiler in the history of mankind. You spend 8 years on a big concrete gizmo that can raise the temperature of water, create steam, and turn turbines, much as a wind turbine would do, or Niagara Falls, or coal, or anything else. So it's just a water boiler. They are enhancing the enrichment of the uranium that they got, and the uranium that they got was mainly obtained legally from Russia in 3 to 4 airlifts, and they're using daisy chains. That means they're not only using one centrifuge, they're linking them up, so as it goes on and on down the assembly line, they get into a greater enriched version of this isotope, whether it's hexafluoride or green salt or whatever it is, and then that must be converted into metal. The metal must be shaped, and it must go into a spheroid, or in the most advanced nuclear weapons, it must go into a rugby ball type of weapon. It's got to be small enough to fit on to a nuclear warhead. It's got to survive the G-force of a nuclear warhead. That's if you're not delivering it in a truck or in a backpack. And it's got to be triggered. And we have generally used single-stage triggers, but the most advanced nuclear weapons have a 2-stage implosion, and the double-stage implosion has now been discovered in Iran by the International Nuclear Agency, the International Atomic Energy Agency. And this 2-stage implosion works not at the microsecond version, which is used for conventional HE explosives, which is high explosive explosives, but at the nanosecond version. It's a matter of mathematics. How long will it be before Iran has sufficient material to produce what it needs for a bomb? How long will it be before it weaponizes that bomb? And perhaps the most crucial part is how long will it be before that bomb is deliverable? Lots and lots and lots of questions. First of all, who has funded this? Well, the Industrial Revolution bypassed the extended Middle East during the late 19th century and early 20th century. In fact, in the Ottoman Empire, which neighbors the region, there were no printing presses, just 99,000 scribes doing mainly ecclesiastical and government writings. So it has mainly been oil. If you read my book, Banking on Baghdad, you will see the original 1908 oil pact with the British. Iran was under the thumb of Western imperialism for, as was Iraq and the entire Middle East, for decades in fuel states that were fundamentally manipulated, created, and otherwise operated by oil companies through the League of Nations. This is in my book, Banking on Baghdad. If Iran had a way to find the money, it could only come from one way, and that would be oil revenue. I funded it. You funded it. You paid it on the mileage program. Every time you bought a gallon of gas, you funded the Iranian nuclear program and expansion. In Saudi Arabia, they made millionaires and stretch limos for sheiks. In Iran, they did something else with the money. And among the things they did with the money was they smuggled it and money laundered it through BCCI to AQ Khan. And AQ Khan sent a part of that money up to North Korea, and North Korea took its no-dong missiles and exported them to Iran and retitled them Shahab missiles. And now we have a Shahab 3 that can go 2,500 miles and even can stretch to Europe. And this Shahab is capable of carrying a warhead. And Israel will be the first victim of any such attack. And as they like to say, Saturday first, Sunday second. And then others feel threatened as well, and this includes Germany, this includes the Gulf states, this includes Eastern Europe. If anybody thinks that there's a strategic interest at operation in Iran, the answer is no, there is not. There's a dogmatic one. Right away, it's completely unfair to stigmatize the Iranian people and the Iranian nation with the same broad brush as we apply to Ahmadinejad and the mullahs. There are millions of people your age in the streets being brutally beaten, suffering gang rapes in prison, tortured, just because they want a different way. Why are there so many young people constituting the new wave in Iran? Because an entire generation was lost in the 1980s during the Iraq-Iran war. 6 digits of people. And so the young people have inherited the earth, and they've inherited Tehran. And they're out there struggling against a way of life that they do not want to carry into their future. So this is a problem because it has its own dynamic. If there's going to be an attack on Iran, how many innocent people are going to be killed? What's the collateral damage? This is not going to be like the Osiris attack in the 80s against Iraq, where a couple of precision F-15Es went into Iran, to Iraq, banged, they hit one facility, and it toppled over, and that was the end of it. There are at least, that I know of, at least 8 to 15 dispersed nuclear facilities in Iran. Some of them are underground as much as a half a mile. They're deeply embedded. They're redundant. We have a bunker buster right now that I reported on. I have, my personal website is edwinblack.com. And I run a million circulation publication called thecuttingedgenews.com, where we cover these issues on a regular weekly basis. Even the bunker buster that is now being rushed into development, the super bunker buster by Boeing in Florida, can only be dropped because of its weight by a stealth bomber or a B-52. Can Israel take out the Iranian nuclear facility without mass collateral destruction that will actually compromise and radicalize their best ally in the world's best ally for a free and democratic Iran, the general populace? It's a toughie. It's a real toughie. Next question. No one's going to just walk into Iran and bomb on Monday and get after-action reports, and that's the end of it. There's going to be a response. And what will that response be? That response is not a secret. That response is 15 to 25 missiles fired at the heart of Israel, from the kibbutzim to the heart of Tel Aviv, from Lebanon, from Gaza, from Hamas, from Hezbollah, both of which are Iranian surrogates, using Iranian-made missiles. And there's something that Israel doesn't want. They don't want to lose one Israeli life. They will put it off to the very last minute, because they know the minute they move against Iran, Iran will have its surrogates within miles of Israeli centers, sending over 10, 15, 20, 25,000 missiles, as they've proven they already have done in other parts of Israel, such as Sderot and North Lebanon. In addition, Strait of Hormuz can be blocked. It's 24 miles wide. It's only 2 miles wide really in each navigable lane going one direction and the other. Abqaiq, Saudi Arabian desulfurization plant in the western Saudi Arabian desert. Saudi oil cannot be made suitable for sea transport unless it's desulfurized. 70% of that is going through Abqaiq. Ras Tanura, Persian Gulf oil is mainly coming into a terminal at Ras Tanura. You take out Ras Tanura, a couple of 747s would do it. You take out Abqaiq, a couple of 747s would do it. You take out the Strait of Hormuz and you block that, instantaneously 40% of the world's seaborne oil is stopped. 20% of the global supply. 18 to 22% of American supply. America ain't ready. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, 57 days. Unrefined oil. No contingency plan for oil interruption. No fuel switching plan like other countries have. No regulation of high mileage vehicles like other countries have. America has no plan. I wrote a book on this topic called The Plan, and other countries too, and it's not even being discussed. The Republicans ain't discussing it. Democrats, not discussing it. Mayor of Cleveland, not discussing it. Governor of Cleveland, not discussing it. You have an anthrax plan. You have a terrorism plan. You have a swine flu plan. There is no plan for an oil interruption, and this is being threatened every single day. There are many overconfident military men who think that they can stop and keep open the Strait of Hormuz based on the tanker wars of the 1980s. It's a new world. And Iran has been planning. And in many cases, the chain of command, naval command and other operations are not even under the central government. They're under the Revolutionary Guards. Why don't you, I had an article on the back page of the Cleveland Plain Dealer about the fact that there is no plan for an oil interruption. Why don't you call City Hall, call the dean of the university, and say, what's the plan for teachers and students to get to school if we don't have oil? There is no plan. The only plan they're talking about in Washington is to economically hijack tankers. They want to bribe a tanker captain in the middle of the ocean to turn around from Venezuela to China and come instead to Louisiana. You can do that like once, twice. We have programs like Cash for Clunkers, which could have been devoted to putting 800,000 alternative fuel vehicles on the road. Instead, they traded in 18-mile-per-gallon cars for 19 and 20-per-gallon cars. First electric car in 1835, first hydrogen fuel cell, 1838. All the vehicles in Cleveland were electric in the first years of the 20th century until they were changed over to internal combustion. We don't need the new technology. But the best military weapon we have against a nuclear standoff with Iran now is the one in your wallet that would allow you not to continue funding this program. So what has Israel done to avoid this? Israel has assassinated numerous nuclear scientists all over the world. They have put Trojan horses in their computers when they're going out with their girlfriends in London and leaving their computers in their room. They have embedded microchips and other things in Iranian machinery, and somehow it just don't work. They've done lots of things to sabotage the Iranian program because it's better to sabotage it than bomb Iran. Now remember, we're not talking about Switzerland in nuclear. We're talking about a country that has continuously threatened to wipe Israel off the map and continuously delegitimized its very existence. Israel will be first in this problem, but Israel will not be last. It would be easy to think that Islam is all just one big monolithic creature. It's not. It has many, many divisions. There is Sunni versus Shia, and within Sunni and Shia, there are many divisions. And right now, they're talking about an arms race in the Middle East, possibly with Saudi Arabia and Egypt leading the pack, and we're talking about the proliferation of nuclear weapons, small ones, suitcase ones, similar to the ones that the Soviet Union is rumored to have made. We're talking about those falling into the hands of terrorists. Remember, a nuclear bomb does not need an ICBM to be delivered. It can be delivered in the back of a van if you can work it out right. So what is the answer? How about sanctions? Won't work. Iran has been under sanctions regime for many, many years. They've been able to thrive. They've been able to assemble their nuclear program. They've been able to expand. The current gasoline sanction that is racing through Congress to sanction any company that sells Iran gasoline, good idea, not going to work. Iran is one of the biggest producers of oil in the world and probably the second largest importer of gasoline. Iran does not have the refineries it needs to fuel its gasoline. Iran has been way ahead of this process. And for the many years that this has been under discussion, the many years, I could say the many decades, they have begun to convert their national fleet at the rate of approximately 20% per year to compressed natural gas. There are 8 million compressed natural gas vehicles in the world. Many of them are converted, many of them are manufacturer-made, and we ain't got them. And we ain't got them because the companies that make them in other parts of the world refuse to make them here, and the only company that makes one here is called Honda, and Honda refuses to supply the demand. They only give 2,000 of their GX cars a year, just enough to get their CAFE standards down in the averages to show they have low fuel consumption. So as soon as you say you get it, I know you don't get it. Because it would take years of understanding to understand how little we know and how little I've explained in this brief presentation. The number one weapon against nuclear proliferation, starting in Iran and sweeping throughout the Middle East, is oil. Stop using it. Not to save a tree, to save a planet, to save a life, to save a society. If that can't work, if nothing will work, if it's too late to work, the sanctions are nice, but they're really just augmentative. There will have to be a military confrontation. That military confrontation will be apocalyptic. When is it coming? How is it coming? Here's the answer. Those who know don't talk, and those who talk don't know. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And now I'll take any questions that you have on any aspect of history that I have covered.
As you know, Iran's nuclear program did not come out of nowhere. Iran suffered mightily during the Iran-Iraq War when it did not use chemical weapons, even though those weapons were used against it by Iraq with the knowledge of the United States.
You mean the supply of the United States? I think we supplied some of those chemical weapons.
Yeah, there's some of the precursors, but more important than that, we never did more than a slap on the wrist in the UN or anything during all those years. And Iran did not adopt the use of chemical weapons as a conscious decision because they said it was against Islamic teaching.
At the same time that they said that, the Ayatollah Khomeini and others said that all 5 pillars of Islamic tenets can be subsumed in order to protect the benefits of the state. But carry on.
Yeah. Well, and then Iran also had numerous threats against it from other countries. So where I'm going on this, without going into all the historical details, is that it seems to me it's completely understandable, because of these threats that have been made against them, that at the very least they want nuclear capability. However, the evidence that they would actually go and build a bomb is very questionable, I would say, in contrast to what you're saying, which you're sort of concluding they're on the way, they will get a bomb, and so on. The evidence from the IAEA and from the NIE report, which I'm sure you know very well, is that at the very least they stopped work on a bomb in 2003 and they have not continued. Now, not every country agrees with that, but
what do you think? What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah, you think Iran is working on a nuclear bomb? Do you personally think so?
No, I think what they want is capability.
Nuclear capability.
Nuclear capability, because staying within the NPT gives them a certain amount of protection. Now, where that goes in a positive way is that if that is the case, then they might be interested in an agreement in which there is intrusive inspections and some kind of control, whatever it is, of the enrichment, and that would tell us much more than we know right now about what's going on in Iran. Most people who are...
So what's the question?
So my question is, why do you assume that with all this evidence that Iran has the bomb and that we're headed, sanctions won't work, and we're headed towards the military?
Okay. What's your name?
Norman Robbins.
Norman.
Yeah.
Does Israel have nuclear weapons at Dimona? Norman.
Yes.
They do.
Yes.
And you know this how?
I know it because, in fact, the U.S. Defense Department inadvertently in its documents said that Israel.
All right, so now we know. In fact, the nuclear weapons in Dimona are not actually nuclear weapons. They're all dismantled. They can be put together on 40 minutes' notice. And the fact of the matter is that, technically speaking, they don't have nuclear weapons. They have nuclear components. So Israel's got nuclear weapons because the State Department, because a Pentagon report says so. Which Pentagon report was that?
I can give you the reference if you want. I have it at home.
Okay.
It's the Defense Department statement where, in the course of it, they said, but in fact, there's hardly any experts in the world.
That's right. Everybody agrees. Everybody agrees, including me, that Israel's got nuclear weapons. It's a doomsday machine that Israel keeps, and Israel is outside the NPT. So, but you don't think that Iran has got nuclear weapons?
Well, I said, I think they are interested in capability.
Capability.
But not that 40-minute capability, because that, if you had inspections, that's why Israel doesn't want inspections. If Iran had the additional protocol of inspections,
yeah.
they would not be able to develop a working bomb quickly.
Okay. So the question here is whether they have a bomb or just want to claim they have a bomb for deterrent. Which is it?
Neither. I'm saying
They don't have a bomb and they ain't making one.
I'm saying they want the capability to make a bomb if need be. Look, they're being threatened every day by Israel's going to attack them.
Yeah.
If they get attacked
When did that start?
years ago.
How many years ago? One?
Oh no. Israel's been talking about Iranian bombs since the 90s at least.
Actually, I have followed the Israeli statements day in, day out since approximately 1999 on this issue when they said it's a decade out. And Israel, publicly and privately in every way, has consistently said, until about a year ago when I reported it in the Cutting Edge, has consistently said there will be no military option, there is no military option, it is not our part to take on Iran. This is a world problem. So I think you're in error there. But I mean, this is something that I live day and night, and every hour of the day I keep track of this. And I don't get my news from CNN. I get my news from the people in government who have their direct finger on the pulse of information, strategic, military, and diplomatic. So let me ask you a question. If Iran doesn't need a nuclear, if Iran is not trying to get a nuclear bomb, why does it have a two-stage implosion device under development?
That was a report that just came out the other day. I don't know enough about that report, and I don't think you do either.
I think I do.
Because that was it was an article in The Guardian. And do you know anything more than that article in The Guardian?
Yes. Okay. Okay. Anyway, the time to worry about an Iranian nuclear bomb is not as the mushroom is rising. No one is objecting to the conventional forces, but the idea that they just want a sweet little bomb just for self-esteem is not cutting it.
You know what? Moshe, his last statement, just one second.
Thank you.
The head of Israeli intelligence just issued a statement that Iran could not have a bomb before 2014.
Let me tell you something. The number one weapon in Israel's arsenal against the Iranian nuclear option right now, right this minute, last night, is misinformation. And they are not going to give an idea of how close this problem is, and they're not going to give an idea of when they're going to attack on Monday or Thursday or a year from now or a month from now. And you know what I've been detecting lately? A lot of people in Israeli positions of influence saying, oh, it's years away, it's years away.
Can we get another question?
Another question.
Mr. Black, I'm curious as to, you kind of touched on it very quickly, and why the idea of mutually assured destruction somehow goes out the window when discussing Iran. This is a discussion that we were on the verge of nuclear armed war with the Soviet Union for a matter of 40 years, and the closest that we came to it was when we almost militarily struck on Cuba. But why all of a sudden the idea that there's some kind of benefit in Tehran launching a nuclear weapon is...
That's a very cogent question. You're asking why we can't take the MAD approach. MAD being mutually assured destruction, which created stability in Europe. I'm going to use the word peaceful coexistence if I can, and ultimately led to the downfall of the Soviet Union. It's the perfect question for the wrong problem. Someone last night at a conference that I'm attending said you cannot have MAD with madmen. And actually, I think it was me. And if it was strategic, it would be different. But if it's apocalyptic, if it's doctrinaire, if there are a group of people in the government who wish to attack, not to further their strategic aims, but to further their doctrinaire aspirations, then that is a different set of precepts. And I don't think there's anybody in the non-proliferation world that I know of who thinks at this time, at least not in Germany, that the MAD approach will work with Iran. And by the way, who would Iran be mad with? Saudi Arabia? Egypt? Israel? NATO? Who would it be with the world? What about the proliferation to their surrogates in Lebanon and Hamas? So I think that MAD is not going to work with Iran. The only thing that would work with Iran is not doing it. But it's a huge source of pride in Iran, and I understand that, and it's a vast conundrum that we can only begin to understand. I'll take one follow-up from you.
The survival of Tehran. I mean, these are men with offshore bank accounts, as I know Fareed Zakaria has touched on that issue. you're saying it's a source of pride. I think Tehran is also a source of pride as a city in existence. I think as soon as there would be a nuclear detonation in Israel, you would be looking at one in Tehran from.
You'd be looking at more than one in
Okay,
Tehran. You
but then
would be
from-
looking at aftershock and disease. Let me tell you something.
From the
I
United
know people in
States?
Texas who are looking forward to the end of the world. And I think that some people are apocalyptic. And when we go from realpolitik to religious motives in our nuclear weaponry, it's always a problem when God is on your side. Go ahead, ma'am.
You mentioned at the very beginning of your presentation that we really have such a superficial understanding of Iran and especially the nuclear problem in Iran. I was wondering if you would mind speculating about why we haven't heard about this before. I mean, I have because I've taken a class on it, but...
All great empires have fallen because they are distracted. The Romans fell because of the games. The Ottomans fell because they were so consumed with orgies and their harems, and I wrote a book about that, Banking on Baghdad. We don't care in this country about what's really happening. And yesterday I gave a talk on this very issue. The media is our main nexus of information. And in the media, the people like yourself, who are the tip of the spear of the population that will inherit the world, who will take charge of our domain. You people have a disconnect with the established media. I don't know how many of you are subscribing to the home delivery edition of the New York Times. Many of you are checking this stuff online. What's the average amount of time spent on an online newspaper like the Washington Post or NewYorkTimes.com? What do you think?
I'm not sure.
Take a guess. Norman, what do you think? 15 minutes? Okay. The people who get paid a lot of money to study this say it's 1 minute and 15 seconds. I run the Cutting Edge News. We reach 1.4 million people a month. We are the kings. 1.18 seconds. 1 minute and 18 seconds. And these people sell a lot of advertising on whether it's 1 minute 10 seconds to 1 minute 15 seconds. They track this stuff. There's a cookie in your computer right now figuring it out. The reason, I mean, how many people in this country even understand that there was never a nation called Iraq? That it was invented by Western oil imperialism, that there were no nations in the Middle East. Prior to the League of Nations creating fuel states, on March 24th, 1920, in San Remo, for the purpose of colonizing the Arab and Islamic nations for oil. It's oil. And so the reason is because it is easier to spend all our time talking about Paris Hilton and not about who's meeting to discuss the world in the Hilton in Paris. Who has the next question? Oh, wait a minute, I want to add something. We're talking to ourselves. That's the most dangerous part of this. The left-wing media is talking to the left wing. The right-wing media is talking to the right wing. The liberals are talking to the liberals. The conservatives are talking to the conservatives. And what they're doing is they're like on a daisy chain of nuclear enrichment. They're all getting to the point where they can have criticality. They're all ready to explode. And as soon as you can't get information from the outside, as soon as there's not some guy in the back, like that gentleman there, who said, "Sir, why doesn't MAD work?" As soon as there's not someone to disagree with you, to challenge you, to get the intellectual exchange, you're in danger. And this country is suffering the way the Romans were distracted by the games. We are distracted by the media. And it used to be the man who did not know went to seek the information. Now, with the blogosphere, with anything goes, Everybody knows everything, and nobody needs to get any more information, and it's one great big echo chamber. And in an echo chamber, clarity fails. Next question. Sir.
You mentioned that Iran is not monolithic, and I'm talking about as far as Iranian politics, what can the world and the United States do as far as supporting one politician over another? I don't mean in terms of what we did with the Shah, but openly. What can we
The
do as
open
far as
support,
politics?
you're saying what can we do to encourage democratic movements?
Right.
We tried a lot. We called, Hillary Clinton called up Twitter and said, don't go down for the night on your routine maintenance. We need to get the news out of Tehran. But Siemens arranged otherwise and sold the technology to Iran to block and track the students and ordinary citizens. This was not just a student revolt, and ordinary citizens. So Siemens and Nokia, one of the 4,000 companies in Iran, in Germany that does business with Iran, did the same thing that Google and Yahoo has done with China, based upon the model that I originally exposed in my book, IBM and the Holocaust, where IBM organized the Holocaust for the Third Reich with punch card technology and began the information age. Anybody here know what the information age is? Anybody? And college, you don't know what is the information age? When did it start? It did not start in Silicon Valley. It started in Berlin in 1933 at the request of Adolf Hitler. The information age is the individualization of statistics. It's when your name is not just you as a counted person, but now you are associated with everything else. That's the information age. And the same lack of scruples that I will be discussing in Professor Haas's class shortly, that has led Siemens, Nokia to give Iran the technology. If we go in there and support candidate A, B, and C, they're immediately accused of being puppets of the West. So all we can do is really stand on the sidelines and quietly, under the radar, and even that has its implicit dangers, and try to encourage democratic movement. For many people, wrongly, the problem with Iran is not democratic movement, it is nuclear proliferation. I believe they are the same. I believe that with enough democratic movement, they can stop nuclear proliferation just because there's an oligarchical, ecclesiastic oligarch system in Iran does not mean it necessarily represents the mainspring of the Iranian people. Please, even in my own publication, I began to differentiate between Iran and the Iranian regime. Next question.
Time for one more question.
At the beginning of your talk, you told us about how Iran has built this enrichment program, and you described centrifuges and daisy chains and stuff like that. In the very next sentence, you told us about the size and shape of a nuclear weapon. There was sort of a little gap in there. Could you say something about the difference between low-enriched and high-enriched uranium and the role of the IAEA?
The IAEA is a watchdog, but quite an anemic one. The fact that this information, this internal report that's been leaked page by page and has been verified by intelligence communities and has not even been denied by the IEAA. Yeah, I'm in energy, so I have so many I's and E's and A's, I never know which one I'm talking about. Has not even been denied by them, and they've really said it's just an internal memorandum. Let me let you know that in order to take that enriched uranium, it's got to be turned into metal, and that metal has got to be shaped. Now, It was, I reported in February that Iran possessed 2,277 pounds of nuclear material, which was enough to create one nuclear bomb. I don't have that in front of me, but it was a low enriched uranium hexafluoride and approximately 700 grams containing the vital uranium-232 isotope. Your question is most appropriate. You're talking about low enriched uranium as being, I'm not going to use the word harmless, but not weapons grade. You have to submit that to centrifuges, and that's a matter of math and time and circumferences. Why does Iran need 6,000 centrifuges, daisy-chained, a half a mile under the ground, to 24/7 enrich this stuff up to weapons grade? So you need to have weapons, you need to have uranium and radioactive processing, you need to enrich it, you need to metallize it, you need to turn it into metal, then you need to weaponize it, you need to have a trigger mechanism, and you need to have a delivery system based upon the information which has been yielded within the files of the Geneva Organization. It is clear that instead of Iran taking it step by step, okay, let's first do this, let's first do this, let's first do that, they're taking a collaborative approach. And they're getting the Shahab missile ready. They've got already the reentry design has been seen. They're getting the weaponizing ready. They are getting the daisy chains ready. They're doing it all at once. This is not Henry Ford's car on an assembly line. This is instead a meetup where suddenly everybody comes in. And it's easy to say that they don't have nuclear weapons, because the fact is that those nuclear weapons are all in different places and might need 40 minutes, maybe even 4 or 5 days to put together. And the latest threat is solid fuel technology. With solid fuel technology, it goes in a railroad car, no one knows it, there's no fueling, and so you don't have the advantage you had in North Korea where you can see the missiles being fueled. Is there one more question that we have time for? Do you have a question?
No, I've got a...
Where's your question?
I don't think we have enough time.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.